That's brutal. That's so brutal. Oh my goodness. That is a Miyazaki run cycle if I've ever seen one. Yeah, okay. This show can pull off some pretty crazy technical animation. Hello. So, Lazarus. This is a show that's been coming out every week now on both Adult Swim and on streaming on HBO Max, and it's a really cool show, and I don't see a lot of people talking about it online, so I'm gonna talk about it. If you don't know me, I'm Dylan, and I am an animator. I've made a couple short films by myself, but I also like talking about animation. So Lazarus is a pretty big deal because it's directed by the great Shinichiro Watanabe, which, if you don't know, is the director of Cowboy Bebop. I've seen Cowboy Bebop. It's great. It was a very monumental anime for getting Western viewers interested in anime. And it was Adult Swim's first big foray into Japanese animation. So it was just great to see that he's continuing working on Adult Swim. And so Watanabe is coming back as a director, and this production is being helmed by Studio Mappa, which does have a reputation for treating its animators not the best, but does end up resulting in very good animation. And generally, I'd like to say that it's not the fault of the studio on whether or not the animation is good, it's the fault of the workers. So I'd like to show off some credits of the workers, specifically on the two episodes that we're going to look at, episode 1 and episode 4. So on episode 1, this is the pilot episode. About over a year ago, we got the teaser trailer for episode 1 with crazy animation. And the action animation in this show is phenomenal. For the first episode, we have screenplay storyboard by Shinichiro Watanabe, and I'd like to focus on the two action storyboard artists, Gosei Oda and Hiromitsu Sekai. They're also credited as key animators along with all of these other people, as well as there being just a wave, just a sea of secondary key animators. Just so many, both from Mappa but also out of Mappa as well, as I'm sure that the first episode was a massive undertaking in just raw animation. So let's look at the first scene, which sort of showcased the mastery of animation in this series, which is the prison escape scene. And I'm going to pause and play it and just really go into the weeds as to why this is just like a masterclass of animation. Okay, so already, I'd just like to say that the compositing is amazing. They use a lot of 3D backgrounds, which reminds me a lot of Chainsaw Man's approach to 3D backgrounds. The compositing team just did a great job making the characters fit in to the environment. That was a really cool shot. I mean, if we just frame by frame go through, we can see that the animators take into account the fact that because he's jumping through the air, we're going to see the wind resistance is going to push back his shirt, and we're going to see underneath the torso. And just, oh my god, look at how, so we could break up the torso into two shapes, right? Basically two cubes, the pelvis and the rib cage. But because he's doing such an acrobatic move, you could see that his rib cage is more of at an angle compared to us. The rib cage is at a 3/4 angle, but the legs need to catch up to the torso, and so the pelvis is at more so a front angle, as we see here, and so we get this sort of twist of the body, and then it changes So now the pelvis turns from front to 3/4, and then the rib cage ends up being foreshortened and twists even more and becomes more of a front. Or I guess it could be a side angle. So they're both twisting in perspective, but the pelvis is being offset. The pelvis is following the rib cage. So the rib cage goes from 3/4 to side, whereas the pelvis goes from front to 3/4, then to side. It's just amazing. I mean, that was also crazy as well. It's such a hard scene to visualize in your head, the choreography. He's doing the acrobats over here, but then this guy grabs him from underneath as he's climbing up, and then he kicks, and then no, he doesn't kick him. He grapples him with his legs, and then the smear as the guard swishes in front of the camera. We see Axel fall down intentionally and grab on. So this is just great rhythm in storyboarding, in cutting on action and making sure that the action follows with each shot. So as they're going down, the action continues going down with them as we cut. And then again, this isn't a cut, but this is sort of like a transition, like he swoops in front of the camera. As the action keeps on going down, Axel also goes down. Great motion. And then this is also such a good way of manipulating the viewer's eye line. We first look at the top of the screen as we follow the character down. We then follow Axel down from top to the bottom of the screen. And then at the end of this shot, we're left looking at the bottom of the screen, which leads great into this next shot where we move from Axel to the guard again, and we see the guard on the ground, and then we look back up at Axel because Axel is the one moving and the guard is staying still. Just great storyboard direction. That's just fun, like having the characters fight behind the bars. And a cool detail there is when Axel jumps up, we can see the bloom of the light go away because he's covering the light bulb, he's covering the light source, which actually happens in real life. And then we see less of the color in the body and just see the silhouette as he's being overexposed from the light behind him. That's just great attention to detail. Great double smear frame right there. Oh my god. What a crazy camera angle to animate. Animating a run cycle by itself is hard. Imagine animating a run cycle from a 3/4 below angle from waist height, so you have the foreshortening of the arm. You have to draw the head from a 3/4 down, which is just such a hard angle. The camera is panning from a 3/4 view to a side view, and then not only does this guy have a run cycle, but then the camera moves forward to Axel's run cycle. If we're following perspective, we see him more so from a 3/4 view as he's entering frame, and then he goes into more of a side view as he stays in the frame longer. It's just amazing. Now this is crazy foreshortening. The character is jumping through a railing towards the camera, which means that they have to draw with the hands first, which is, you know, an artist's worst nightmare, drawing hands. But because the character is so close up, they also have to stay on model and draw all these you know, all the ear, all the different like hair. It's crazy. Into a body roll. And then, gotta love the smears. Love those dashed lines. And then he goes back up. Oh, that's brutal. That's so brutal. I don't think you guys understand how hard it is to animate in slow motion. If you've got a character moving in slow motion, with a camera, it's easy. Just increase the shutter speed and boom, like you got extra frames. With animation, you have to do so many in-betweens to make it look smooth. If it's in slow motion, you want the motion to look smooth. You don't want it to look choppy. Choppy animation is generally good for quick actions. Slow motion, you need in-betweens. You need smooth motion. So just look at that shoe. I wouldn't be surprised if they 3D modeled that shoe. If not, that is crazy good solid drawing. Moving the shoe in perspective. And then also, our background is in a fisheye lens perspective, where we have the vanishing point in the center. More so like here, we have the vanishing point in the center. But then these lines are all curved as they go out. So this is a classic 5-point fisheye lens. You also see some great character acting. He doesn't have a smile on his face the whole time. You see here, he checks his neck. He sort of breathes, and then he gets back into it. That's a little bit wonky. This pose specifically, it looks very robotic, and that's because his pose is very symmetrical. When you pose characters in a dynamic scene, you want them to have asymmetry, because asymmetry is interesting. This is a very symmetrical pose. Both his arms are up like this. His legs are both still like that. So it looks very robotic. Having a character turn at a 3/4 looking down angle, and then having the torso turn like this, and you see these overlapping lines over here that shows off the back anatomy and everything, like all these, it's just amazing. And then having this single contour line going down does so many wonders. It helps so much with selling the perspective of this character turning, because you can follow that line, that center line from his back in each new frame. It's just great. And then he's off. He's gone. So that was episode 1, and that was just a great first, pilot episode, a great showcase of, it's just so good. The action is amazing, and it definitely sets up your expectations for the rest of the series. Shinichiro Watanabe is saying, hey, this show is going to have great action, get ready. And so after the first episode, from episode 2 and onwards, Studio Mappa managed to get fight coordinators for each of the action scenes. In almost every episode, there's a high animation intense action scene. And so in episode 4, the fight coordinator, Jeremy Martinez, the fight scene design is by 8711 Action Design, and the action storyboard artist is Todd Harris. We have more key animators, Hiroyuki Aoyama, and Hiroyuki Aoyama is also the animation director. So let's have a look at episode 4's fight scene as well, because it's just amazingly choreographed with some really good snippets of animation. A great cut on action. This character moving in the foreground is so well done. That looks great. Great acting with his hand coming up as well. They didn't need to do that. And him moving from the right side of the screen to the left side of the screen. That's amazing. Oh! That was brutal. Look at those smear frames. Oh yeah. Look, you even see with this smear frame here, you can see that we're cutting into the arm as well. Instead of just going outside of the arm, we also cut into the arm, which I don't see that often. That's a really good way of doing a smear frame. And then we continue that with some great exaggeration. Look how long his neck is. That's not a usual neck length, but you know, the action is so exaggerated, the impact is so large that it called for super exaggerated proportions. The camera follows along with the action. Look at how the camera pans around with the background. In almost every single shot, the background has a warped perspective. So as the background shifts across, we think that the camera is panning along, but that's because every single background uses a fisheye 5-point perspective. That has some amazing effects animation. And this is usually what happens in action scenes. They usually show an action twice. As we see here, this character is thrown into the table and we see the table break, but we then cut on action and we see the table break again. We get a different shot which shows off this moment a lot better, but we get to see it twice, because if we only see the action once, the viewer might miss what's going on. So the storyboard artist makes sure that the viewer notices what happens with this action by showing it twice. And because it's such a quick action, the viewer just goes along with it. They don't even notice that it shows twice. But the storyboard artist makes sure that the viewer knows that this guy fell into a table and it looks magnificent. We had some great acting over here, where this guy on the left gestures with his arm first, but instead of just, you know, they could have just had the character gesture once and then they go, but no, they had him gesture once and then gesture again. But the first time it's just with his arm, the second time he even rotates his head. It's just that extra attention to detail which really makes it. Oh my goodness, that is a Miyazaki run cycle if I've ever seen one. That looks straight out of Studio Ghibli. I don't know who animated that, but whoever did has sure done their homework. That looks like such a jovial run. I just love that little hint of comedy in this action scene. We need a little bit of comedy in everything. We introduced this element of this character in the dress entering the scene, but then we focus on this woman fighting, and we still see the girl in the background running towards us. And then she interacts with the scene as she literally enters the combat sequence. And then we cut on a 2-shot of them. That's great direction. That slide was a little bit wonky. He slid a bit too fast, a bit too quickly. But again, the viewer's not paying attention to that. That was a great down shot. Was that animated on ones? Oh my goodness. That was so smooth. Look at how the dress falls back down when each leg kicks it back up. So, like, such attention to detail. That did not have to be animated on ones. that was a great sequence, and this is a great way of explaining different frame rates and how animators can utilize different frame rates for different reasons. Because I'm sure we would all like all of our animations to be 24 frames per second, you know, everything on ones, but with such complex motions and with such complex characters, we can't always do that all the time. But there are points where animating on ones is the best move, and this is one of those points. It's a moment where the viewer has to follow the characters as the camera turns with them. And so whenever there's a camera movement, the camera movement is always on ones. It's always on 24 frames per second. So if the viewer wants to track a character when the background is moving, it's generally best to have the character move at 24 frames per second along with the background. Otherwise you get a weird shuttery flicker effect as the character moves forward, then moves back, then moves forward, then moves back, moves forward, then moves back. So what they did here was, on the camera pan, they animated the characters turning on ones, which is just a full body turn, and then we go on to twos. As we see here, we see the background move, but the character stays still. Background moves, character stays still, background moves, character stays still. So now we're animating on twos. As we go into a more complex action, it cuts on action as we flip, and this is all animated on twos as we see the background shift a little bit, and then character moves, shifts, then character moves, shifts, then character moves. Because I'm sure the animators aren't able to animate all of that on ones. That's crazy. Animating it on twos is crazy enough. And then that whole motion is just such a good way to incorporate two characters in an action sequence. We end this action sequence with a jump to the helicopter with this just amazing run cycle. This is just like a very good run cycle, animated on ones as the camera tracks in. Like, not everything has to be this flashy. I mean, sure. We have 3/4 looking up. We have camera moving in as character goes from foreground to over the shoulder, with a foreshortened arm shooting at this one guy, with overlapping action with the dress sliding on the floor, the hair flowing up. Yeah, okay. This show can pull off some pretty crazy technical animation, but it can also just do the fundamentals just amazing. With this run cycle, that's just, it's just a side view run cycle. Not anything crazy with the perspective, but it's animated on ones, and you've got the shirt flowing back. You've got the secondary action with the necklace flicking back up. You've got the arms and the hands splayed out in this sort of desperate run. And you've got the head tilting down and up and down and up as the torso shifts from left to right. It's just very well executed. And then he jumps and grabs on, and he's got that cocky smile again. So Lazarus has amazing animation, and it's thanks to the director Watanabe, it's thanks to these storyboard artists and all of these key animators and in-between animators all coming together to make this amazing show. Now, at the time of making this video, there are 9 episodes out of, I think, 13. And the reason why this frustrates me is because not enough people are watching this. Now, outside of the action scenes, the animation does take a dip. The compositing is like 10 out of 10 at all times, but each episode, the viewer is kind of waiting for the action scene to show up, because otherwise the animation is still good, but it's not blow your socks off good. Which especially hurts when an episode doesn't have an action scene, which happens a couple times. But I'm really excited to see where this season goes, where the story ends up, and I hope that more people give the show a chance, because even if you don't really care about the story or anything, I'm pretty sure you'd tune in to see some great animation like this. The action animation is enough to sell the show. So thank you for watching, and I will talk to you later. Bye!